This is the Dover Download Podcast. My name is Christopher Parker, and for the past 25 years, I've had the pleasure of working with, learning from, and talking to a variety of volunteer, staff, and community members. This podcast explores conversations, activities, and a variety of policies and programs which exist here in Dover to improve the community in one way or another. About 15 years ago, I learned about permaculture, and permaculture, which is a science/agricultural term, which will be well more defined than what I'll use here, is a idea that no things should have one purpose, number one. Number two, that you can effectively and efficiently use land to better move yourself and society forward, that nothing is in and of itself. I raise this because one of the things that jumps out to me about having more than one purpose is street trees. And we're going to talk today with folks from the Planning Department and Facilities and Grounds about a recent project where we are replacing our street trees in downtown Dover. So, going around the horn, Mark Colonna is the Facilities and Grounds Superintendent. How are you, Mark?
All right. How you doing, Chris?
Good. John DeRoche is an intern with the Planning Department, focusing on urban forestry, correct?
That is correct.
Great. And a returning, almost catching up to some of the other members of the Planning Department, is Dr. Jackson Kaspari, our resilience manager. Hi, Jackson. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. So as I said in the intro, to me, one of the beauties of street trees is that they perform multiple functions. And you can all correct me if I'm wrong, but I see them as providing an aesthetic value when I'm walking to and from work. It's nice to see that street tree. I suppose at some point when there's shade trees, that's a benefit too. But they also perform a vital drainage and stormwater function. They reduce heat island effect, and they generally provide a sign of a vibrant and active downtown. Am I missing anything else?
One thing I will add is that there have been studies that have shown that cities with healthy urban canopies have had much more healthy people, whether that's physical health, mental health, just being able to see greenery from your window has a very positive effect.
Jackson, where did this project come from?
So a few years back, there was the development of a central business district street tree plan, and that involved a number of different partners and consultants. Stratford Regional Planning Commission played a big role in assisting with that. And it laid out a foundation for identifying how we were going to move forward in terms of tree maintenance, replacing trees that were sick or dying with new trees that are healthy, replacing the empty tree pits that we had throughout the downtown with new trees and so on. And so since then, there's been a lot of coordination and effort being put into implementing portions of that plan and updating guidance and providing new recommendations. And that led into the creation of this fellowship project, which I'll let John talk about a little bit more. But we brought John on as a way to help assist with implementation efforts, specifically this summer, and provide some of the groundwork for moving forward into the future.
So, Mark, can you tell us how long you've been with the city and what your functional role is here with us?
Yep. As the superintendent of facilities and grounds, I just attained this position somewhat recently, about 6 months ago. But I have been with the city. It'll be 20 years at the end of this month. Worked my way up through some of the different divisions. Been in facilities and grounds for the last 9 years. So I've been on the streets, trimming up trees, things like that. We handle all the facility issues, all the city buildings and city grounds issues. Try to take care of the playgrounds and parks, although it is tough to keep up with the amount of infrastructure we have. So we're trying to keep up on that.
Both Jackson and John talked about the plan side of the tree replacement program. You're on the install side. What exactly is the process? What does that look like on an operations standpoint?
Well, we actually don't get too involved. When trees are healthy and they're doing well, we don't really get too involved with them. It's when there's a concern on a healthy tree, or if a resident calls and has a concern with the safety of a tree, if it's got some unhealthy branches. We usually dispatch a crew to trim up some, suspect items on them and With the replacement of the downtown trees, we've been involved. We've had a crew out that digs out the tree pits, whether there's an old stump we'll have to pull out from years ago, or if the tree pit's been empty for many years, it's just a matter of digging the tree pit out, getting it prepped for. We have a contracted company that we're purchasing the trees from, and they come in and actually install them. We lend some help with that, some amendment materials, things like that. John's been very instrumental with orchestrating all the resources between the tree company that's installing them. There's actually a bit involved with preparing the areas, getting dig safes done, orchestrating with parking, make sure we have parking spaces blocked off to make them accessible for the crews digging the pits and installing the trees.
So Jackson, as part of the overall project plan, is it advocating for just new trees or replacing where there are empty tree pits, or is it also speaking to disease-dying trees that should be replaced?
Yeah, thanks for asking about that. I think that it's a multifaceted approach. The two elements that you mentioned before, we've also replaced this year a couple of really sick and dying trees that were actually cut down by Mark's crew, and then the stumps removed and replaced with new healthy trees. Eventually, we're looking at a multi-year phased approach for dealing with our ash trees, which there are over 30 in the downtown, who have unfortunately been infested with emerald ash borer, which has been a national problem. These trees are dying. You can see the dieback is very visible in their canopies, and we know that there's going to be an aesthetic impact when it comes time to remove them. So we're trying to come up with John's help a really smart approach, and not just a public outreach campaign, but a way to remove a portion of them each year and replace them with new trees and actually add additional trees on top of that. So we're sort of getting ahead of what's being taken out.
So John, does the plan or does your experience give us some guidance on how we should be phasing this approach? And if it's a 5-year replacement program, a 10-year, when does the cycle renew itself?
So what other cities have been doing is doing a phased removal in which they'll take out a handful of trees at a time and preserve others until the next year, basically, so that you're not removing all of the shade that these dying trees are providing all at once, which would, greatly increase the levels of heat on streets. And so back to your question, like when exactly an ash tree that has been removed would be replaced, I think what would be best for the city would be to replace it pretty much as soon as possible. So you would remove a handful of trees, then replant, and then probably next year you would move on to other trees. And so basically you were not just staggering the removal of the trees, but also the planting of these trees themselves, which is having a diverse age group among your trees is one key aspect of a healthy urban canopy.
Nothing is free, so there is a cost to these tree replacements. Can one of you speak to where the funding is coming from to do this project?
This specific project was funded through the Conservation Fund. So the Conservation Commission authorized the use of that enterprise fund, $20,000 in total for the 15 tree replacements, which included, not just the cost of the trees alone, which run about $1,000 a piece, but also the installation costs and the watering that needed to be done and kept up with throughout the summer.
What's the caliper of the tree and what's the height of what we're adding? We're not putting seedlings or saplings in, right?
Yeah, so these are typically around 2-inch caliper trees. Right now they're probably 8-10 feet tall, 12 feet tall. So yeah, we're not planting saplings. These are very much young trees.
When you say 2-inch caliper, is that usually at like 4 foot high is where you mean?
Yeah, roughly they call it
chest height.
Diameter of breast height. Yeah, is what they call it. If you go down, it's not much larger.
Sure.
These are young trees.
Jackson mentioned that watering for the first 2 years is important. How do you identify that? Are there reservoirs in there, or do you have a crew that goes out with a water?
Well, this first season, they have water bags or water gators on them that wrap around the base of the tree that get filled with water and slowly seep into the ground. The first season, the contract is going to be responsible for making sure those stay filled, and then typically the second season, we have a water truck that will go around. It's the same water truck we use to fill the whiskey barrels throughout the downtown on the islands.
As we wrap up this conversation, I'm curious, you've got the 2024 trees in. Mark, you mentioned we did some last year. When do you start planning for next year's round? Is that something that you wait until the spring and evaluate the health of some of the trees? Are you doing that over the fall, winter to set up?
The Forest Management Subcommittee has been pretty crucial in giving advice on how to approach this process. They have some really good expertise. Ideally, we would get a jump on this a little bit sooner than we did this year. So we probably start late winter, early spring, trying to really get a plan in place, especially if we're going to do 15 or more in any given year. But fall is also not a bad time to plant necessarily. So, there is a fairly large window that you can make this happen, especially with a good watering plan in place. But ideally, we would start earlier in the spring.
We're going to be actually installing some trees this fall at the Pine Hill Cemetery to replace some of the ones that have come down. We have some very old red maples and some spruces that have needed replacement. We have some tree donations going in. So we'll be doing that through the fall, keeping them watered.
That's an interesting point you just mentioned. If someone wants to donate a tree, if someone wants to come forward and say, and I know we do this for benches and we do it for other things, but it's possible to donate a tree in someone's honor?
Yes, it is. We do several of those at the Pine Hill Cemetery, but there is also some around the downtown. I think in the Henry Lott Park, you might see a couple of trees with some plaques below them.
And they would reach out to your office?
Yes, they could, right at the Pine Hill Cemetery Facilities Grounds and Cemeteries Division.
Jackson, why don't you wrap us up? What other things haven't we covered that you want to make sure the public is aware on this project?
I think one of the critical aspects of this project that I would like John to speak to a little bit more is the real attention to species diversification and what is going in. We mentioned the issue with the ash trees and the ash borer. We have, a lot of those ash trees close together. And so now that we understand better about, resilience of street trees, we've really tried to separate different species next to one another to provide a variety of trees that are going to hopefully maintain, health long into the future and be more resilient to any pest infestations that could occur. But I'm wondering if John could speak a bit to the different types of trees that were installed.
Before I discuss the species that have been planted, I think it's important to note, historically speaking, that planting monoculture, one species in a city has just always ended in disaster, whether it's American chestnut, elm trees, or now our issues with the ash. And so it really is important to plant diverse species. It's also important that, like I said earlier, that it's not just species that are diverse, but age diversity, so that will involve trying to maintain the longevity of some of our older trees. And then to speak on some of the species that have been planted, we have planted red maple, ginkgo, hornbeam, honey locust, serviceberry. A lot of these have really nice foliage colors as well, so it's adding to the aesthetic value. All in all, I think this summer we planted 7 or 8 different species. So that's roughly 2 species of every tree that was planted, which is pretty diverse, especially by certain metrics.
That's great. And I think it will help when it's time to remove some of those trees or trim some of those trees, because it won't seem as in your face that occurred, that it'll be more of a blending. So that's a great point to bring up. Thank you, John and Mark. We're going to let you go now, and Jackson and I are going to chat a little bit about the Community Power program here in Dover. We recently had some rate information, and Jackson, I thought maybe it'd be good to update the listener on what the new rates are for Community Power and chat a little bit about where that's at.
Thanks so much, Chris, for the opportunity to discuss the recent rate changes and the product options that are going to be available from August 1st, 2024 through January 31st of 2025. So that's that 6-month window when you can expect new rates to take effect. And during this rate period that's active now, the Granite Basic option, that is your least cost option at 24.3% renewable content, which is what the state defines as being the renewable portfolio standard. That is at 8.6 cents per kilowatt hour. And I'll note that is about a 17% decrease from the default Eversource rate, which is currently 10.403 cents per kilowatt hour. So you would expect to save around $12 a month if you took that rate option. Going up from there, we offer a Granite Plus option, which is still very competitive at 33% renewable content. That is 9.3 cents per kilowatt hour. And you would expect to save around $8 a month based on average residential usage statistics. From there, you could get 50% renewable content at 10 cents per kilowatt hour. Again, still paying less than that Eversource default rate at that product option and saving a few dollars a month and contributing to, the growth of renewable energy locally in New Hampshire. And then finally, if you were to opt for the Clean 100 product, which is 100% renewable, you would be paying 12 cents a kilowatt hour. So you would expect to pay an additional maybe $10 a month on your supply costs. And folks should understand that this is only impacting the supply portion of your bill. Eversource still dictates about 50% of the cost that occurs on your electric bill, and Eversource is still the electric utility. Community Power is just another supplier option.
I think that's a good point, that when you give those rates, they are independent of the transmission rate. And we've heard about this at the council level, that we need to be transparent, and I agree that there is a total cost, and that the only way to avoid that total cost is to generate your own power through some other means, whether it's a solar panel, wind farm, whatever option you would choose. But the only way to get a total avoidance is to totally be off the grid.
Yeah, and even most of the solar that you would have in a residential use case is still tied to the grid. So there's still some interplay with the grid that has to happen.
Earlier this year, we had a workshop. You and Bill Baber, the chair of the Energy Commission, made some presentations to the city council on community power, amongst other activities that are being reviewed at the Energy Commission level. And one of the conversations we had about community power was that approximately 50 people were choosing one of the additional tiers, not the basic, but one of the additional tiers. And I'll self-identify as one of those 50. How can someone choose to move beyond the general to one of the other three levels? And as you say, the second and third tier, the 33 and the 50%, those are still below, maybe marginally on the 50, but below the default rate.
Yeah, so someone can do that pretty simply. They can visit www.communitypowernh.gov/Dover, which is the URL. So you could simply type in Dover Community Power as well into your search browser and go to the website, have your Eversource account number handy, and with some simple information in about 5 minutes, you could opt to a higher product option that would take effect in the next month. And you could also feel free to call the customer service line, which is 1-866-603-POWER, which is 7697, which is another way that you can simply interact with a customer service representative to choose a higher product option. We've seen an uptick since that workshop. Fortunately, more folks in Dover are taking advantage of this. It's around 100 customers now that we're seeing utilizing these products. And I do want to plug the fact there is a very friendly competition between some of the Seacoast communities going on to try to spur on some outreach on this particular subject and make people aware that they are able to take advantage of these other product options. So this is a great chance on this podcast to plug that.
You said that if I go today and increase, it'll be the beginning of the next billing cycle, effectively.
Correct.
So you won't wait until the February. It's not you're locked in for the 6 months. It is truly billing cycle to billing cycle.
That's right. Yep, and that's one of the great advantages of this community power program is the amazing level of flexibility that you have on essentially a month-to-month basis.
So, Jackson, while we're sitting here, I'm thinking it's a good exercise to go through the process. So I'm at the 33% level. As you just said, the 50% level is at or just slightly below the Eversource default rate. So I'm going to go through, look up first my Eversource utility number, because I think that's going to be an important factor, and then go through the website. So going on the bill, and I see my Eversource number is a 560 . No one else needs to know that. Now I'm going to Google Dover Community Power. And I'm scrolling down, and there's a Get Started. So I choose that I'm an Eversource customer, and I'm in the city of Dover. And then I'm putting in that number. I appreciate copy and paste. And then it's asking me some general account information, and then it's asking me what I want to choose. And it's interesting, it doesn't say what I'm at now. It's almost like I'm starting from scratch. And I guess for a side note, here is where if you wanted to opt out, and if you were a loyal Eversource customer, you enjoyed paying a lot, you can choose to opt out of the program, but I'm going to opt for the 50% level. And I am verifying all the information. And I'm hitting submit. And now it's telling me it'll review my request and be in touch if there's any issues, but I'm all done. So that's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's as easy as that.
Well, it was as easy as that. Yeah. One thing that I want to clarify is the city is a facilitator, and you're on the board of directors as part of the governance. But really, the city is a secondary entity here, right? I mean, the municipal corporation, none of this cost that I'm going to incur or that you incur or anyone incurs goes into the municipal operations, correct?
That is correct. So all of this is a direct pass-through. The finances are managed by the coalition, which is governed by its members, Dover being one of them. But those products, what you pay for, Granite Basic all the way through Clean 100, are reflective of the cost of the actual power that's being procured, and obviously some minor overhead costs associated with operating all of these programs.
So is there a target number that you or others at Community Power are hoping that will reach here in Dover?
You know, that's a great question. I don't think we've set a particular target. We just want to make sure that people know that this is one of the advantages of this program, is having these other options, and you can do something yourself to better the clean energy of New Hampshire without necessarily taking on, installing solar panels. Especially renters don't necessarily have that option. So this is something that you can do to lessen your footprint with your electricity consumption.
So that's a great point, is that it is not based on the owner of the property. It's based on the actual tied-in user to the power grid. So as a renter, I control that in a lot of cases. Sometimes it is part of your base rent, but 9 times out of 10, I would guess that utilities, including electricity, are the renter's responsibility. So if I'm a college student, if I'm a renter in any scenario, I can just go onto that website. I feel like we're on a telethon. Like, I could just go to the Dover Community Power website and make that change, and the property owner is not relevant to that conversation.
Yep. It's totally based on whoever is, the electric customer registered with Eversource. That is up to their decision.
Well, I appreciate you coming in today, and like we've said, check out the website, use the phone number, customer service number, if you want to make that change and aren't sure how, and definitely reach out to us if you have any questions. Thanks for coming in, Jackson.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Thanks for listening to the Dover Download this week. If you like what you heard, subscribe through your favorite podcast aggregator. And if you have something you want to hear a topic on, let us know. Finally, this is just one of the many ways we share information about the city of Dover. You can subscribe to the Dover Downloads email newsletter every week, or other newsletters that we have, by going to the City of Dover homepage, www.dover.nh.gov. Have a great week.